Welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. Your host is the founder of the UK Travel Planning website, Tracy Collins. In this podcast, Tracy shares destination guides, travel tips, and itinerary ideas, as well as interviews with a variety of guests who share their knowledge and experience of UK travel to help you plan your perfect UK vacation. Join us as we explore the UK from cosmopolitan cities to quaint villages, from historic castles to beautiful islands, and from the picturesque countryside to seaside towns.
Okay, welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. This week I am chatting to Karen, who you may recognise, or whose voice you may recognise, as she is the one who does the intro for the podcast. So Karen interviewed me on episode 14, where I discussed the highlights of our UK trip last year. And she was talking about her own trip to the UK at that time. So in this episode, Karen has come back to tell us all about her trip to the UK with her family last October. So Karen, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us all about who you are? And just tell us a quick kind of brief overview of the trip as well.
Hey Tracy, you might recognise my voice from the intro, and we had a chat a little while ago when you were inspiring me about your trip around the UK, just as we were planning our trip back there as well. So I run a website called Smart Steps to Australia, where I help families move to Australia because 8.5 years ago, I moved with my family to Australia from Hampshire in the UK. So you might recognise my accent being from the UK. We haven't been back to the UK since we moved over here, and we've been wanting to go back, but obviously COVID got in the way for many years. So we were planning on going back last year, and we ended up going back for 6 weeks. We did a bit of a whistle-stop tour and took in lots of different sites, but really for us the main aim was to go back and see our friends and family who were dotted all around the UK. So we did quite a bit of a tour around lots of different places. So hopefully I can share a little bit about places we went to, how we travelled around, and food we loved, and all those kind of things.
Perfect. So, do you want to? So you were there. Did you arrive in September? Didn't you? So
We arrived at the end of September, and we stayed through to October. We kind of planned it so that we could travel through the kids in Australia's school holidays, take 2 weeks of that, and take a bit of time either side of the holidays. We also didn't really think we'd cope very well in the UK winter. Because we've lived in Queensland for too long now, and we're pretty soft, so we don't like the cold anymore. And my kids didn't own coats or anything like that. They didn't wear jeans. They rarely wear shoes, to be honest, outside of school in Brisbane. So it was a bit of a shock, but we thought we'd go. September time's a nice weather in the UK.
Yeah, it is.
It's not too hot. It's not yet cold. We kind of thought it was a good time to go. So we spent sort of just under 6 weeks there, and it was really good fun, and we got to catch up with lots of people and do lots of travelling while we were there, but it was very, very busy.
I can imagine. Well, we after the last podcast when you talked to me about our 12-week trip, how busy that was, and I'm going back for another 12 weeks. I actually arrived back on April the 11th. I've got to actually plan my itinerary, but the list grows of things that I'm going to try and fit into those 12 weeks. So I actually need to take a bit of my own advice and sit down and kind of prioritise and start planning the itinerary.
Yeah, actually, that would be my top tip, actually, just to take away from all of this is plan. We had a spreadsheet going, and after talking to you, I picked a lot of tips previously about this, but we had a spreadsheet to plan what we were going to do, because we had a lot of people to see, a lot of places we wanted to go, because our kids, we've got 3 kids, and when we moved, they were 4, 4 and 2, so they didn't really remember any of the UK. And we really wanted them to go back and experience it and see some of the places that we love there. So now they're 12, 12 and 10. And
should say they're twins.
Yeah, they're twins. Yeah, and we obviously travelling with kids adds a different dimension to everything, because especially for my 3, because they all get travel sick and they don't like travelling for too long, and they get bored really quickly, and they fight in cars and all of that fun stuff that goes with kids if you're on the road for too long doing too much stuff. So you're kind of balancing it out between seeing people, travelling, allowing some rest time and some downtime where you're not doing very much in between, just to decompress a little bit and just kind of calm down. There's so much to fit in. And
I'm just going to jump in there actually and ask a question, because you mentioned something that's really interesting, because obviously it's a long flight. The long flights back from particularly Australia over to the UK. So traveling with 3 kids. So have you got any tips that you'd share with anybody who's planning to, fly, whether it's from the States, because, still talking 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, or from Australia where we're talking 23 hours. I say that and cringe. But, how did you kind of prepare the kids for that sort of length of flight? And did they take specific backpacks each, or how did it work?
Yeah, well, we were kind of travelling in a different kind of system. We were travelling on standby flights, which meant we all knew that there was a good chance that most of us would be split up as well on the plane, because we were sort of taking last-minute seats, which adds a little bit of extra stress to that.
Yeah, you can say that again.
So yeah, we were travelling in a different way to what the majority of people will be travelling. So if you know you're all going to be sitting together, but we knew there was a chance apart, and actually my daughter and I, who's 10, sat together on all the flights, but everyone else was kind of scattered around a little bit on the plane. So it was the first time the kids really remembered going on a plane as well. So it was all a bit new to them. So we talked to them about the experience of going on a plane, how it works, like what food you're offered, and how to accept it even if you're not hungry, just so that they could kind of pick at some of the food and see what they liked. Because I knew that our kids would probably just say, no, we're fine, and then 10 minutes later they'll be hungry again. Whereas if they've got the food, they can kind of take biscuits or keep what they want and not eat. They don't have to eat all of it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
To have it. We did things at the airport, like we made sure we had food before we got on the plane, because airline food's never the best. We made sure that everyone had a bottle of water that we bought at the airport after we'd gone through security, so that we all had plenty of drink with us, so that we didn't have to keep kind of waiting for the little cup that gets brought around like regularly. But because you just always might need a little bit of drink in between the sort of servicing of the drinks on the plane. We made sure that when we were at the airport, we walked around as much as we could to burn off a bit of energy and just get a bit of sort of adrenaline burned off before we got on the plane. We made sure everyone had their own bags and that they all knew what was in their bags and how they could access stuff. So things like antiseptic wipes that they might need for their hands, or a jumper or a change of clothes, or and as I say, my kids tend to get travel sick. My daughter gets really travel sick, so I was with her all the time, but we made sure that we travelled with extra sick bags, extra vomit bags, because they give you one on the plane, but that was not enough, unfortunately. She had travel wristbands. We did travel sick tablets as well, and she was quite poorly, but
that's a long way as well.
So she managed to last most of it. But we made sure that they knew how to work the TVs on the seats. So when we all got sat down on the plane, my husband and I would take turns kind of walking around the kids to make sure they were okay, make sure they knew what they were doing, that they'd got headphones and that they were all set, that they knew where we were sitting, so they could find us if they've got any questions. But it was just kind of preparing them for what to expect, really. I think it helped. And they kind of like just sitting and watching a movie for a long time, especially on the way back, because one of the things that we did in London was go to Harry Potter studios. And my twins hated Harry Potter before we went there. I'm sure we'll talk about this in a minute, but they really enjoyed going to the studios. So when we flew home, they spent the whole 24-hour flight just watching the Harry Potter movies from start to finish. So that was great.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And then how did you deal with jet lag with the kids as well? Because obviously that, again, is a huge problem for us from Australia. And, somebody asked us the other day actually about that. And I was like, main thing I try to do is slot straight into the time zone. But that's it. I mean, it's difficult enough as an adult to try and keep yourself awake, but how did you manage with the kids with that?
They were amazing on the way over to the UK, because we landed and met up with their grandparents, who they hadn't seen for probably 4 years since COVID struck, and they met 2 of their little cousins, and one of them was for the first time and the other one was just a baby when we left, and their aunties and uncles, and they were just buzzing. And it was actually Matt and I that were really exhausted. And we were really trying to keep ourselves awake, and they were like, can we go to the park? Can we do this?
That's brilliant. That's really good.
They didn't stop till
they were still ready to go.
We did have a couple of days where we all just felt a bit sleepy in the afternoon, and actually Matt and I had a few afternoon naps the first couple of days, but the kids didn't. They just went right through.
Wow.
And were amazing and just settled in. On the way back, it was different. We really struggled on the way back to Australia. That took a good 2 weeks for us all to settle back in.
Not as much excitement coming back to Australia and going back to school.
No, exactly, because they had school a few days later, and we got delayed as well at the airport on the way back, so we ended up taken a really long time to come
to get
home.
back.
And I think that really hit us hard. But yeah, trying to just get back into the hours that you're now in.
Yeah.
Getting out in daylight, all those kind of things, lots of water, avoid alcohol, all those kind of things help a little bit, but just resting when you need to, I think. You will hit a brick wall in the afternoon at like 2-3 o'clock.
Yeah,
you just have to accept that, and then just not plan too much in the first 2 days as well. We the day we actually landed, the Queen passed away.
Right.
Today that happened, so that was sort of quite a change to everything, because my husband's sister and brother-in-law are both in the police, and it kind of changed some of the dynamics of what they were going to be working on, and the availability that they were going to have. And also we were planning a trip to London a few days later, which it kind of shifted things.
You have to change things a little bit.
Yeah.
So do you want to kind of talk us through your itinerary?
Yeah. So we landed in London, and then we stayed as a base for a couple of weeks on Hayling Island in Hampshire, which is where my in-laws all live. It's just like a little island that's attached to the mainland by a single road. And it was just a base where we were staying with family for the 2 weeks, but it gave us a place to kind of go and explore from. We were near Portsmouth, so we did some trips out. There was the historic dockyards, which unfortunately I missed because one of the kids was sick, so I missed that one. But the kids that did go had an amazing time and said that was...
It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I try to encourage anybody to add that in. Just go and see the Mary Rose. It's just stunning. Just absolutely stunning. The way they've done that is fantastic. Yeah, we spent a good, probably most of the morning, if not into the afternoon, I think, exploring there. So definitely a really good place to go and visit.
And it kept two 12-year-olds entertained.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Two 12-year-old boys that don't find it easy to go around museums. They enjoyed it.
Oh, because it's so good. It's really good. So interactive. Very, very well done, definitely. And what else did you do in Portsmouth?
So we went to Cornwall Quays, which is sort of a big shopping complex that was built a few years ago, which is a really nice kind of clean kind of designer outlet place, which we kind of went there just to hang out and meet people and have drinks and things, which was nice. And we went to the Spinnaker Tower, which, again, I missed that one due to having a sick kid because, as I say, my daughter, when we arrived, she was pretty sick for a couple of days after the travel as well, because it takes the body a little bit of time to settle in. So again, half the family went up the Spinnaker Tower and had a lot of fun doing that. They really enjoyed it.
Oh, I've not actually been up it. I think I might do that this year.
There's a glass pane that you can lay on. So we've got some great pictures of the boys laying sprawled out on this glass. I'm not sure I would.
No, I don't think I'll be doing that one.
We also visited my favourite place around the area, which is the New Forest. I don't know if you've got any of the New Forest in your next itinerary, but it's so beautiful, so lovely.
I haven't, but you try. Yeah, well, you never know. You never know.
So in the New Forest, you've got New Forest ponies that are just kind of wandering around the streets, and you've got these really quaint, really beautiful little villages, and it's just gorgeous, and I love it. We went to the Bewley Motor Museum there, which was good fun for an afternoon out. And we went to Brockenhurst, which is a really lovely little village and a nice place with pubs and a little stream running through it, and just a nice little quaint place to go for a day out. We had a few days in London. So the kids, obviously, being now in Australia, they learn about different places in the UK. So they knew a lot of places in London that they were really keen to kind of go and explore. And we'd got them involved ahead of time to kind of have a look online and have a look at your site and things like that to try and plan what it was that they wanted to do in London.
Yeah.
Due to the cost of going to London and being in London with five of us, we didn't stay for too long, but we could have easily stayed for a full week in London and still had so much to do.
Absolutely.
We barely scratched the surface, but we had 2 nights, and we went with a family of 9 of us, including 5 kids under 12. So it was a little bit chaotic.
I can imagine.
So we did, as I say, we got the train there. I think we might be talking about trains and getting around in a little bit, so I'll come back to that soon. But yeah, we got the train to London. The first day we got the bus from Victoria to Harry Potter Studios. Yeah. We booked the bus tour thing because we thought that was going to be easier with all of the kids. And we booked the ticket into Harry Potter Studios for the later sort of afternoon. I think it was about 3 o'clock-ish entry.
Yeah.
We booked it a good probably 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time, but tickets were booking out early. So I would definitely say the earlier you can book
absolutely, for Harry Potter. Yeah.
I personally, I looked on the website and it said you only need 4 hours or 3 hours to do Harry Potter Studios. We could have stayed there an entire day. I kind of regretted booking the bus tour in the end. I wished we'd hopped on the train. I know it was a change or two.
Our train's really easy. It's just Euston up to Watford Junction, and then outside the train station you turn left, and there's actually the Harry Potter bus and it's free.
Yes.
So you just jump on the bus and that takes you, and then you're not restricted for time because you can do exactly the same when you come out of the studio. There's regular buses take you back to Watford Junction and then get you straight back to Euston.
Yeah, and with us booking the late afternoon slot, it was a bit late for the littlest kids coming back, and we had to catch the last bus back because we were on this sort of the bus ticket.
Yes.
And it was timed that we had to be on a certain bus, and it was quite late at night, and it would have given us so much more flexibility if we'd rearranged our itinerary a little bit, so we could have done this on a day we had a free day. Obviously, we travelled we drove from Hayling Island to Havant and then got the train from Havant to London.
Yeah.
So that took up
quite a lot of the day, yeah.
So that's when we did Harry Potter in the afternoon after it. So I wish we'd cleared the day and done a clear day at Harry Potter, because my daughter is Harry Potter's biggest fan. So we rushed around the studio tour so she could have enough time in the shop, because I knew that she would just freak out in the shop by how big it was and how much stuff she wanted to buy. And she did buy things. And so we needed at least an hour in the shop at the end, and ideally more if you've got time. So Harry Potter, just absolutely amazing. My boys don't like Harry Potter, came home loving Harry Potter. Now they're reading Harry Potter and they've watched all the movies and they absolutely love it. But it really transformed them, and just it's one of the best days that we had in the UK.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. It's really good value, providing you don't buy every single photo that they try and sell for kids on every room and doing every little thing, because they add up really quickly if you buy all of those extras. But the main entry bit was expensive. So we did Harry Potter. The next day, we did the Natural History Museum, which was a lot of fun. Again, we barely scratched the surface, but with the little kids, we could only walk around it for so many hours before we'd all lost the will to live a little bit. We just needed to go to Hyde Park to look at some squirrels, which was
nice.
One of my kids' favourite things was seeing squirrels, because obviously in Australia you don't have squirrels, and they were just fascinated by the fact that there were squirrels that would come up to you. So.
Yeah. I have to say about the Natural History Museum, I think it's a rite of passage of every child in the UK to actually visit the Natural History Museum at some point in childhood. Yes. Everybody, in your childhood, you have to go to the Natural History Museum.
Yeah, it's good. It's a great place to go, though. It's a huge museum, so don't try and do all of it, but it's really good fun. Then, obviously, just back to sort of while we were in London was the week just after the Queen had passed away. So it was really busy. Loads of roads were closed. It changed lots of plans. We did catch the big bus tour, but it was quite slow going because of detours and different issues. But obviously other people won't have that issue. It was just that we happened to be there at sort of quite a historic time. So that added a lot of atmosphere for sure to the experience. But yeah, the big bus tour was really good, and we really loved doing the Thames River cruise. That was really good fun too.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could have stayed in London for so much longer. There was so much we wanted to do, but 2 nights really was a big chunk of our budget with all the different things with so many of us. So then we came back to Hayling Island again. After a few more days there, we went on to Cornwall. Now in Cornwall is sort of a holiday destination in the UK. It's somewhere that my husband went every year growing up on holiday. It's somewhere I loved going for holidays. So we actually went for a little mini holiday between family and friends, sort of just so we could have a bit of time on our own, just the 5 of us, just to explore a little bit and show them around some of the places that we really loved. So we went to St Ives, which is really, really beautiful, very busy, but very beautiful. We went to Perranporth, which is a lovely little beach town. There's not a lot there, but a beautiful beach. The kids were in awe of how much like Australian beaches it felt like, but it was freezing.
I was going to say a bit colder, maybe.
So we had our big coats on, but it was good fun. Then we went to St Agnes, which is another little, really cute little village with a few quaint shops and things. And that is the place where my husband swears has the best Cornish pasties in the world. And my kids swear has the best sausage rolls in the world. There's all these massive sausage rolls. And I like the cream teas from there too. So that St Agnes Bakery was a hit. And then I know I've mentioned this in your group before, but there's a little place called Chapel Porth, and they do there's a little hut with cafe, and they sell kind of tea, coffee and ice creams, but you can get something called a hedgehog ice cream from there. And that is an ice cream, a Cornish ice cream in a cone with a big dollop of Cornish clotted cream on top. And it's rolled in roasted hazelnuts. And it's just the best thing in the world. But only drive down there if you're very brave, because you had to get down to the beach where it is. It's a really narrow single track. There's only room for one vehicle. So if there's a car coming up and you're coming down, there's only a few passing points on the way down, and it's so steep and it's so scary. And my husband has grown up on Cornish roads sort of on holiday, so he's used to it. But the rest of us had our hands over our eyes. My daughter just thought he was lying. She didn't believe it was a two-way road. She was like, no way is this a two-way road? But it was...
It's just, I thought one way, just one way down, and you had to come up a different way. Yeah,
if a car's coming up, I do not know what you do, because there aren't that many passing tracks. But yeah, driving in Cornwall can be a bit hairy anyway, but driving down to Chapel Porth is something that you should only do if you're feeling very brave, and ideally not in a camper van or a motorhome. Because my husband did talk at one point about hiring a motorhome to go down, and then I pointed out how narrow the roads are in Cornwall, and it's not the best.
No, I don't think I'd want to do that either. I have to say, when we were in Cornwall last year, Doug had the job of just driving. When we were down there, he drove. I didn't do any of the driving. Scotland, I did some driving, but Cornwall, I was like, nope, you can do the driving.
Yeah, well, we followed the advice of some people in your group, I think it was, that said, in St Ives, we stayed at a holiday park just outside St Ives, and we got the bus.
Yes,
St Ives.
Yeah,
and I'm so glad we did, because Matt's got nerves of steel with driving, but even he was like, whoa, St Ives is another level. Don't try and drive there.
No, I try to. We recommend parking your car at St Earth. If you want to catch the train, just catch the train in from St Earth. It's actually a lovely, picturesque little train ride into St Ives, and then you're not worrying about trying to drive or park in St Ives. No, that's a good tip. And I'm going to add that St Agnes Bakery. I don't want to drive down it, but I'll add it to potential to my itinerary.
Yeah, it is good. I'll have to see if we've got any photographs.
Yes, that'd be good. Yeah.
I know.
Then you headed up north after that, didn't you?
So then after a few days little break, we went up to Sheffield, which is so I was born in Sheffield, and then I grew up in Lincoln, about an hour away, and then then I moved back to Sheffield in my 20s. Then I moved down south to Hampshire when I met my husband. So we've kind of lived around and about in a few places, but yeah, I lived and worked in Sheffield in my 20s, early 20s. So, and I've got family there. And as I say, it was where I was born, and my ancestors go back generations and generations there. So I wanted to go back really to have a bit of a look round my old haunts when I lived there, but also to do a bit more ancestry research, as well as to visit some of our family who are still there as well. And it was really good fun. I mean, Sheffield's got a cathedral. It's not a cathedral like some of the other cathedrals. It's pretty, but it's not Lincoln Cathedral, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. Lincoln Cathedral is my favourite cathedral in the UK. So we went round the cathedral there, and we went round, just had a quick walk around some of the galleries, and there's winter gardens, and there's a beautiful theatres sort of square in Sheffield where you've got the Lyceum and the Crucible, which just Sheffield's really good for arts, and that's what I used to love about living there. There's loads of festivals happen. It's really, really vibrant. Loads of cool places to eat. It's kind of got a really vibrant edge to it, Sheffield, and I love it. But we didn't get a lot of time there, unfortunately. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. We just had a bit of a walk around, looking at places that some of my ancestors had got married and been christened. And then we went to a cemetery there. Sheffield's got a huge, huge cemetery. And I remember it from being a kid, going to family funerals and things. It's just sort of this big cemetery on a hill, and it just seems to go on and on forever. And I'm very lucky in that in Sheffield there's a really good grave registry that you can look at to look up graves of people. That helped me a lot when I was doing my ancestry through Find My Past and ancestry.com, where you can look up graves and you can see people who are similar to that name in the same graves, or people who are buried nearby, and all different information like that. So it actually the grave registry has really helped me piecing together my family tree, and which is really good because my family tree kind of stopped on my dad's side at my granddad, because he didn't know anything more about my granddad's history. He thought he was an orphan, but actually his history goes back long beyond that. He was in a workhouse, and his mum put him in a workhouse, and he had all these siblings that we didn't know about, and all of this sort of fascinating history. So for us, Sheffield was a bit of exploring for me about. I kind of wanted to see some of the graves of some of the ancestors that we just discovered. So we went to the actual cemetery office and took the information we'd got, and they were able to print off some maps of this huge cemetery so we could walk around and see where people were buried. So I found that really fascinating. It was really interesting to go and have a look around. I know a lot of people like to go and do the ancestry stuff.
It's fascinating, actually, and it's something because I've been doing my family tree. So I've got on my father's side, Irish and Scottish, not too far back, we're just talking great-grandparents. And on my mother's side, it's Cornish, actually, Derbyshire, and then also the northeast. So I'm actually hoping to do a little bit of the same when I'm back, actually probably in the northeast, probably just a few generations back from my great-grandparents, but certainly try and do a little bit of that. And also track a little bit of the Irish and Scottish ancestry as well. Yes, so it's a fascinating thing to do. And I know I'm sure that many of our listeners who live around the world who are doing the same, trying to kind of track back their ancestors from Scotland, England, Wales, or Ireland. Yes, it's good to do that. It's a very interesting thing to do.
Just interesting to travel around, walking around in Sheffield with the kids to places that don't exist anymore. But this was where, like, generations of our family lived on these streets in these sort of neighbourhoods, and now it's all very different. But it was just really interesting to walk in the same places, and it was something that I didn't really get into when I actually lived in Sheffield, but like I got into when I moved over to Australia, and just found out how Sheffield for me was the location, so it made it really easy because everyone was in that location, going back through my mum's family and my dad's family.
Oh, that's easier.
Well.
Easier for you
then. To go anywhere.
Mine are all over. Maybe just wanderers.
Yeah, which will be still. You could go on a whole tour exploring all
Absolutely.
of that. It can take up a lot of time, so we kind of had to just narrow down. We knew we were going to Sheffield, so we'd just do the graves on an afternoon in between different trips. So it can definitely eat up your time getting to places. We didn't have time to do my husband's ancestry. He was all Manchester and cotton mills and all of that side of things.
Oh, wow.
So that will have to wait for another trip.
Yeah.
And then we went on to Lincoln for a couple of weeks, which, as I say, that's where I grew up, and it's where my mum and dad live, and one of my brothers still live there. So that was really good fun. We got to with a lot of people, and Lincoln itself as a city is such a pretty city, and it tends to not be on people's like itinerary, but in my opinion it is the most beautiful cathedral in the UK. I think it's absolutely gorgeous, and if you do go to the cathedral, something you need to look out for is the Lincoln imp, which is a little figure that is hiding within the cathedral somewhere up high that you have to look around. It's just like a little imp figure that there's sort of a story that goes along with it, that he was being naughty and he was cast up there and turned to stone. But that really got the kids excited looking around the cathedral because they couldn't stop looking for this imp. And then somebody saw them looking and pointed it to them straight away. So they got a bit disappointed. But so if you go and have a look round, anyone who's there from the area will generally know where to find it. But it is quite hard to see because it's a big stone cathedral with lots of intricate kind of carvings and different things, and you've got to kind of find this little imp there. But we had half a day looking around the cathedral, which was gorgeous. Then we went across the walkway just to the castle, so they're literally next to each other, and they make a great day out together. And the castle's really good fun because you can walk on the castle walls and walk all around it, and you get a great view of the cathedral, really beautiful view of Lincoln City. It's really, really pretty to do. And then you've got a copy of the Magna Carta there, so you can go and have a look at that. And also in Lincoln Castle during the summer, they sometimes have different shows and events on, like they'll have Shakespeare productions, and I think my mum went to see Cliff Richard performing there once before. Like they have like live music and different events on and things. So if you're planning it in summer, you might be able to kind of go along to a summer event, or they sometimes have like reenactments and things on there as well, which is good fun. now. Do you want me to talk a little bit about?
Well, I was actually going to say, you'll be happy to hear, I am actually going to Lincoln.
Yay!
So we'll be going to, so if you're in the Facebook group and look out on the website, there will be some information coming about Lincoln. I actually have, I'm not sure if I've published it, but I have got a Lincoln travel guide, which has got kind of an overview and information. But yes, I've been to Lincoln before a few times, but Lincoln, Oxford. There were a few places last year that we didn't get to. Like Oxford was another one that are kind of top of my list. Cardiff was another one that are top of my list this year to make sure that I do get to. So we'll be going to Lincoln.
Yeah.
Then you went to Skegness, which I'm fascinated. So I last went to Skegness, I have to say, in 1976. So I won't tell you my exact age, but put it this way, I was under 10. And it was the year that was ladybirds. I just remember lots of ladybirds. So you took the kids to Butlins.
Yes. So I grew up in Lincoln, which is about an hour from the coast. So the nearest coast really is Skegness, fondly known as Skeggy or Skeg. It's a really cheesy seaside town. It's not the most beautiful place in the world. It's really not. But it was the nearest beach. And when you're a kid and you don't live by the beach, go and see the sea was really exciting. So it was sort of more nostalgic that I really wanted to go there. It's quite funny to go back. But
what did your kids think of it? I have to ask you.
Did you see the photograph? I'll have to share the photograph.
Yeah, they looked a bit cold.
They were freezing. It was just, I don't know what happened. The week we got to Skegness, it was the coldest week ever. We had these big coats on. It was freezing. It rained all the time. It was proper northern cold weather. Like, when you're travelling in the UK, you do notice a big divide between the southern weather and the northern weather. And Skegness definitely had the northern weather.
And I just have to jump in there because I love the fact that you say big coat. You had your big coat on. Because that's such a... Because, it's to wear your big coat. So, yeah, your big coat would be what you'd wear in the winter. So that's your kind of thick, right, bigger coat. Rather than just needing a jacket or something, you need your big coat on because it's cold. So when you said that before, I was like, I haven't heard that for a while. Big coat. Yeah.
So actually, talking about coats a little bit, what we did was we bought like hiking type coats that had a fleece liner in them, so we could wear either the fleece liner or the MAC outer coverage, or put them both on together. And in Skegness, we had both on together because it was cold. But Butlins, you were mentioning, I think that is a unique to the UK experience. It's a caravan park type style accommodation resort that's got everything for kids in it. So you've got it's really for primary school kids. How do you explain it? So you've got like chalets, you've got caravans, you've got apartments all on site with like a big resort that's got like different stages where they have like Barney the dinosaur. And
so if anybody's watched Heidi High,
yes.
If anybody's watched Heidi High, the TV show, that's a pretty good example of kind of, I think that's set in the 50s, isn't it, Heidi High? So that was what it was like, because in the 40s and 50s, or after the war in the late 40s and 50s, going to parks like that was really popular because people weren't going abroad, didn't have the money, and it was a really good way to travel around the UK and take your kids somewhere that they could enjoy. Lots of kids stuff on. And so I honestly, I remember 1976 when we went, and it was just lots. It was good fun. It was really good fun.
Yeah, it is. They have like a packed program of entertainment. And actually, even as a teenager, I went for my first girls' holiday when I was 17 to Butlins. So they it's got this balance between having a bit of fun at night kind of thing. And like, obviously, it's mainly a kids' resort, really. But yeah, they have red coats. So like the yellow coats in Heidi High, the red coats at Butlins, and they lead all the entertainment. And they've got like a little on-site fairground, and when you've bought your pass to go in, that's it. You don't have to pay for anything other than the million tons of food and like sweets and lollies and like endless supply of sugar that you need to keep feeding your kids with. But like they've got really good water parks, so they've got a really good indoor swimming pool with slides. And so even though my kids were a little bit older, they spent 3 hours at least of every day just on the water slides, having the best time. And they absolutely loved it. And it was really good fun. And they remembered it from when the older ones remembered it from when they were kids. So they wanted to go back, and they now don't understand why in Australia we don't have Butlins.
Oh, really?
They love it. They want to go back.
There's an opportunity for Butlins then.
So, yeah, that was kind of our tour, really. We just sort of toured around all those places, visiting people, meeting lots of people in lots of pubs. That seemed to be...
Yes, I saw lots of photos of that.
Just because it was easy locations to meet at the groups.
Oh, absolutely. And also take the kids as well, because you can have in the garden. Did you set in the gardens, or was it a bit chilly, or was it all right?
It was a mix.
Yeah.
It was, we tried to find places that had somewhere for the kids to hang out so they wouldn't be too bored. So especially if we were going with meeting groups of kids, we found places that had got a beer garden, because even with a jacket on, the kids could still have fun playing in the playground.
Oh, that's good. So I know when we talked for the episode that year, in episode 14, when we talked about mine and Doug's trip back, there was things that we had to cut out because we didn't have time, like Oxford, for example, which I was really upset about because I love Oxford. But I know there was a few things you had to cut out because you didn't have time. So what did you end up dropping from the schedule?
Yeah, well, it's hard, and I think because traffic can get busy and things, so that can also knock you out. So on the day we drove from Hayling Island to Cornwall, we were going to stop at Stonehenge, but we got stuck in roadworks, and it put 3 hours on our journey. Wow. It was insane. So we had to cut Stonehenge out. That was a bit of a shame. It would have been nice to have seen that. And we also cut out Winchester. We just didn't have the days clear in the schedule, and we realised quickly we needed some downtime in between days out because the kids just needed it.
Oh, I can imagine, because it can be full on if you're going from place to place to place. And even as adults, we found that it was like, we did build in some, a few days here and there where we weren't doing anything because, and also because I sometimes think you don't appreciate it as much when you're just trying to. You kind of get culture overload or castle overload or city overload or museum overload, and it's like, I don't want to. Like, for example, I think Doug, by the time we got to the V&A, he'd kind of switched off. Well, I could have spent the entire day, and guess what? I am going to spend the entire day in the V&A because I'm good on my own. So to really enjoy that. Yeah, and I think sometimes you just need to do that. You just need to go, okay, I can't fit it in this time, and that's what I am going to go to Winchester.
So Winchester would have been so much fun to go and have a look around, but we just ran out of time. Chichester would have been nice. There were places that we knew from when we lived there that would have been good, but we just didn't have the time. Somewhere that I forgot to add that we did go that I forgot to mention to you was Sherwood Forest.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought that was quite a fascinating one for the kids, because the kids had heard of Robin Hood, and I thought it's a nice outdoor attraction for them to run around in. We managed to squeeze that in and have coffee with some friends there and have a walk around as well. So that was really fun, just to go and see the major oak and just have a look around and learn a little bit about that.
So then how did you get around? So obviously 6 weeks is quite a long time. I know last year we hired a car three times, and we took the train a lot of times. And we had looked into borrowing a car off some friends, but when they spoke to the insurance company, it was really expensive. So I know, but this was something that you managed to do. So that'd be interesting to talk through.
So obviously I'm in lots of groups about helping people move to Australia. So a lot of people do go back like we have for a longer trip. So I've been watching people in these groups for a long time saying they weren't able to get insured on their family's car and it was going to cost a fortune. And so we were quite worried about it. We've got family in all different places, so we were kind of confident we could get a car to borrow. It was just the insurance side of things. So we got my brother and my father-in-law both to check if they had to ring their insurance and just check. They needed information like our driving licence number and our age and whether we'd got any points on our licence or not. And they were both able to insure us on their vehicles for minimal money. It's like a few dollars, like less than $50 for the trip. So we ended up borrowing my father-in-law's car, luckily, for the whole time and just drove around in that. But I think if they were to have phoned up and found out it was really expensive, I think there might be an option to look for a third-party insurer to insure you on that vehicle independently. Right. So that was going to be the next option I would have looked at, because hiring a car for 6 weeks would have been a lot. And because we were based a bit more rurally, we were just on the outskirts of Lincoln and on the outskirts of, we were in Hayling Island, which isn't the most accessible place. We knew we needed a car for the majority of the time. So, yeah, we had a car, but that doesn't mean that you should use a car everywhere because, like we said, there's a lot of places where it's not worth travelling by car, or it's really difficult to, or it's actually a lot cheaper to not have to. So there were places we did park and ride in big cities, like when we went into Lincoln. Lincoln can get quite busy. Parking in the city is really expensive. So we found park and ride up. Lincoln's split into uphill and downhill kind of areas. So uphill, which is where the cathedral and the castle are, we found a really great park and ride at a supermarket that we just parked at, paid a minimal fee and got a round trip on the bus. and it was so easy. But my only tip with park and rides is to make a note of the last bus back, because we almost missed the last bus back by assuming you could just stop and have dinner in the city and that. But the last bus back stopped at like 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
just be aware of what the times that the park and ride run. But and we did park and ride in Portsmouth as well. Really cheap.
I know we
It's
did
not
it in
driving.
we did it in Stirling. You can do it in Durham. There's so many cities now that have got park and ride, because they actually want you to keep your car out of the centre of the city because it's just too busy. And I think I've got an app actually. I'll list that as well, so you can check. But if you're planning to go to any of the cities, or in your drive-in, you're doing a road trip, is check. And if you can, park outside the city and do the park and ride. It just makes life so much easier, because you really do not want to be driving around trying to get parked. And sometimes you just can't. Quite often you can't get parked.
No, and things like Sheffield, we drove to the hotel, just left our car there, because the good thing about the UK is you can, if you're somewhere central in your hotel, you can walk a lot of places. So we just explored Sheffield on foot. We went all over the place, just walking around on foot, and we didn't really need the car at all. They've got a really good tram system in Sheffield, lots of buses, and it's just very easy to just walk around. And also Uber. There were times I was saying earlier on that my 10-year-old daughter just sat down and said, "My legs hurt, I'm not walking anymore." And the hotel was 20-minute walk away, so we were like, "Oh, let's just call an Uber." And it's the same app that you use in your country. You just call an Uber.
Yeah.
Head home. Dead easy.
And then, I know you talked to Doug about the trains. I think you might have contacted him when you were over there, actually, to ask him about the trains. So you were impacted by the strikes?
Yes, we were. So I used to travel a lot by train when I lived in the UK. I used to go to work every day on the train. I used to travel across country because I didn't really drive in the UK. So it was just everything's so accessible over there. So I didn't really need to drive. So we knew that when we went to London, we were going to travel by train. We knew that different trips we wanted to do by train, and we looked in advance on trainline.com and were able to book like from Havant to London. I think it cost us something like, can't remember now, it's really silly, like £8 or something each one way. But it was just by booking in advance and just getting the really cheap and flexible tickets. We knew we were going to catch that train. We knew it wasn't, our plans weren't going to change regarding London, because we booked Harry Potter Studios, we've got tours locked in and things. So we locked those in probably at the same time as booking the tickets for things in London. We booked it all on the same evening. And we got some really good deals, but then strikes got announced like a week later. So then I remember reaching out to Doug going, "Doug, what do we do?" And we were able to go online and check, first of all, that we could get National Express coach tickets to London and back. Actually, no, it was only returning that it was an issue, I think. Anyway, we got National Express tickets. They were more expensive, which was a bit frustrating. And then the Queen passed away, and then they cancelled the strike.
Yes.
So then I tried to cancel the National Express tickets and rebook the train, because with 9 of us travelling, it was going to be quite an expensive extra. But we couldn't cancel the National Express then, which was really frustrating. So we had to come back via National Express. But it was actually really nice, because we'd had a really long time in London, and it was much nicer travelling on a coach where you've got your own seat and you can sit and just relax, and it was just quieter, and the kids all went straight to sleep in the bus, and it was easier than lugging stuff around on a busy train anyway, so it was fine. But it worked out, like just keeping an eye on when the strikes are and just knowing that you can change things if
And it was also, I guess, easier for you, just think, because I used to take coaches all the time in the 80s when I used to fly in the UK, is that you were going back, because your coach trip from Harry Potter Studios, I don't know if it was the same day, but I'm just thinking, were you near Victoria Coach Station to catch the coach? No,
no, that was a different day. So we ended up being able to get, in the end, now it's coming back to me, we were able to rebook a train to Victoria in the end, because they reinstated that day before I booked that particular coach ticket, but we ended up doing the coach on the way back from London.
Back.
And then that went into Portsmouth Harbour, so it made just a few changes around the journey home, because we weren't coming back to Havant, we were going back somewhere different, but it was easy.
It all worked out.
We had family coming to pick us up, so it was fine. Or if you were hopping in an Uber, it didn't really make a difference. But it just keeping an eye on when the strikes are, and knowing that you've got an option. If they announce strikes and you've pre-booked, you can cancel and look at other options.
And they have to announce 14 days before a strike as well, which does give you some time to look at options.
I think it's still good to have pre-booked things early because the deals were really good compared to if you booked the tickets on the day, there were a lot more money. So yeah, we did quite a few train trips. There were a few things that we couldn't do, like I wanted to go to Sheffield on the train, but that was a strike day and we just couldn't work out a way to make it happen. So that's why we drove that day. So it's just being a bit adaptable, I think, really.
Yeah.
And as I say, catching the bus where you can. And they're really friendly on buses. Like, they just tell you where to get off if you need to know. And just, especially in tourist areas, especially like places like Cornwall, you can just ask the question, how much is it? Where can I get off? What can I do? Like, how does it work? And they'll just tell you what the best, most affordable ticket is for the day for your group. So sometimes you'll find there's family tickets available as well. So yeah, we did a bit of a mix of travelling around in different ways.
Because obviously it was about 8 years since you'd been back in the UK, so that's quite a while. So what surprised you? What had changed? What was different? What were you not expecting?
For me, I think I expected it to feel really different, and actually I just got back and it just felt like I just walked straight home again. It didn't feel very different at all, which was really strange. And you just instantly slipped into this kind of old way of life. It was really funny. I forgot how big the huge supermarkets are, like the massive Asda's and the massive Sainsbury's that sell everything.
Yeah.
And you just
can spend all day in there. I do. I love going around the supermarket when I'm back. So just shop off at Sainsbury's. I'll be here all day.
So that really shocked me. Like we just ended up spending a fortune on food while we were away. I think that was the biggest shock. Eating out was expensive. I found in some places eating out in pounds was the same price as in dollars, if that makes sense. So you were looking at something that was £18 on the menu in the UK that would have been $18 here in Australia. And that was a bit of a shock. There were some meals out for a family of 5 that we went for that there was a meal out where we didn't have dessert and we shared a couple of starters and we managed to get a couple of the kids' meals free because we were buying adults' meals. And it was like $250 for the family, for 5 of us.
Wow. So about £125, would you say?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
it's a lot.
A bit more than that.
Yeah, wow.
More than that. Yeah, with exchange rates, it was a lot. And we wouldn't normally pay anything like that for a meal out for a family here. But that was at my favourite restaurant, which is somewhere that I had to keep going back to because I'd really missed. We'd all got these little things that we were missing from the UK, and my husband's food list was massive. He wanted to eat all the food. I just had this one restaurant that I wanted to go back to a few times called Damon's in Lincoln, and there's one in Sheffield, and it's just a ribs restaurant. It's nothing fancy. It's my favourite restaurant. I just love it, and it's nostalgic from going there as a kid.
I'll add that into my itinerary.
You've got it if you like barbecue ribs.
I do.
It's a great place to go. But budget for it because they also do cocktails. And I think
oh dear,
possibly where our downfall of our budget went.
I can imagine. So because you mentioned food, and I know Mike, your husband, was really looking forward to eating lots of the foods when he went back, and we're going to do. We're going to record another podcast after this one, actually talking about food. So this is getting us into the kind of into the mood. I know I cannot wait to get back in April. So the first thing I will have will be gammon steak and chips because I absolutely love gammon steak. And then the following night I will have scampi. So it's like my mum knows exactly what she'll make for it, and then we'll probably eat out and have a carvery meal. So that's where you're going to have the meat and the vegetables. So those are the things. So what was it you were really looking forward to, and what did you enjoy?
Well, I really love food in Australia, and so there's not a lot I've missed here that I haven't been able to get here. Like we have got a couple of really good British fish and chip shops within an hour of where we live in Brisbane.
Do they do scampi?
I don't know.
Because I need to find that out.
Scampi, I don't know.
Ah, okay.
But now I feel like I should try it because it's obviously something. I know Matt eats it, but
I love it.
But cod and chips or haddock and chips, like fish and chips, I just to be able to just nip to a fish and chip shop anywhere and have amazing British fish and chips. Now, I will just say, if you haven't had British fish and chips before, it's greasier. The chips are more oily. They're like hand-cut chips, deep fried. They're not like frozen chips that you get at fish and chip shops if you're in Australia most of the time. It just tastes different because I know that quite often I'll see people complaining online in local groups about the British fish and chip shops in Australia saying that they're too greasy. But I think they miss the point of the fact that they're British fish and chip shops.
Yeah.
Like British fish and chip shops, they're supposed to be greasy and they're really good. That's the thing that I really love being able to do, just nip to the chip shop. And Chinese takeaways and Indian takeaways, even though we have them in Australia, they're just different. They do different things. They do different, they're just different.
Yeah.
They're really good. So we were looking forward to that. So we had a couple of Chineses, a good Indian takeaway. Matt was obsessed, like you, with gammon and ham and bacon, because they don't do it the same here.
No, or in the States, no.
Sausages, Matt was obsessed with sausages, because in Australia they're not always pork sausages, they're mostly beef sausages. Whereas
or chicken.
Yeah. So Matt's obsessed with sausages, sausage rolls, going to
bacon butties. Yeah, going to Greg's. So we're going to talk about Greg's in the next one, because I kind of grew up with Greg's around the corner. So, it's you go to Greg's and you get, I used to love the sausage baps. I'm going to use sausage bap.
So Ruben would get angry at me. One of my boys would be angry if I don't mention cheese straws.
Oh,
He'd never had a cheese straw before. And because Matt spent his whole trip nipping into a baker's everywhere we went, he would always buy Reuben cheese straws, and he thought they were the best thing in the whole world. So yes, they were all those kind of things. Donuts as well. We always tell the kids that donuts in Australia just aren't the same as sort of the bag of donuts we used to just buy from Asda or Sainsbury's, or like the jam-filled donuts that you used to buy in a big bag. And so they were the kids loved them.
I enjoyed those. I don't eat donuts, but what I have got on my list is lots of those Instagrammable places that everybody likes to go and eat in London for all the desserts and sweets. So I'm going to try some of those as much as I can anyway. Did you have, obviously, when you went down to Cornwall, did you do the Cornish tea, afternoon tea?
We
cream
didn't
tea?
go anywhere.
All right.
We just bought them from lots of bakers and took them home to our accommodation.
So you weren't controversial with the jam and cream thing?
Oh, well, no, there's no, well, we are. Hang on, we have a different controversy in our family. So
all right.
You've got your scone.
Yeah.
And the controversy normally is whether you put jam or cream on first. And I don't think there's an argument about that. It's got to be jam first.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But the controversy is that my husband and one of my kids put butter on before the jam and then the cream. And I don't agree with that.
Oh, I don't know. No, I'd just go jam and cream. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm going to have to try that now and see what I'll get back to you on that one and let you know. What were the highlights of your trip? I guess, what were the things that you took away when you came back? You went, oh, wow.
Well, for us, it was all about seeing family again and friends. And some of them we haven't obviously seen since we moved over here. So it was really lovely spending time with the kids' great-grandparents. It's really nice spending time with people who aren't going to be here forever and ever, and just being able to spend that quality time with people. And that was really nice. We adored Harry Potter Studios. That was a highlight. The Thames River cruise as part of the big bus tour was really good. One of my sons is really into architecture, so he really enjoyed doing that and seeing all the different buildings all the way along. Meeting up with so many school friends. So, I've got a best group of friends who I've been friends with since I was sort of 12, and they've all got kids who are similar ages, so we had lots of really good fun times getting together with them, so that was really great. So for us it was about the people, but I really enjoyed going back round some iconic places like Lincoln Cathedral and the castle, and taking my kids around them and getting photographs of them, exploring these places that we really, really loved.
I'm going to ask you. Good. I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everybody at the end of a podcast, but I want to kind of put obviously because you travel with, your family and 3 children. So, if you were planning the trip again, and I'm sure you'll be going back at some point, but if you were given one tip to anybody who's planning to travel to the UK, who's got children, obviously, yours are 9 and 13. 10 and 9 and 9 and 12.
They were 10 and 12.
10 and 12. So 10 and 13 now. So 10 and 12 at the time. So, what tips would you give to anybody planning to visit with kids?
Try to break up journeys. So, some of the drives that we did were long drives. So, from Hayling Island to Cornwall, it's a long drive anyway. We planned on starting off early in the morning so the kids could kind of sleep here and there. We planned in some things like McDonald's and things that they knew that they would enjoy in between, so we could have a little break. But we also actually, on that long drive, we stopped at the place where we got married, which was just a bit of a random thing. We got married at a tiny little castle in Exeter. We didn't live near it, we just found it online and we got married there, and we've got all these lovely photographs of us there. And when our twins were babies, we took them back there for a trip. So I've got photographs of them there as babies, but it was really nice to go and take the kids there as sort of older kids to have a walk around. And it just broke up the journey a bit. So just if you can break up the journey somehow, for whether it's a park, playground, a meal, find something that you can stop and do on the way so that you're not expecting them to stay in a car for 8 hours in a block, because it's quite a long time to travel. Trying to give them a bit of space from each other a little bit, because 3 kids, especially when you're in a car, like we've got a bigger car here, so they don't all sit like squashed in. But there they were just all 3 in the back seat of a car, and it was a bit tight. So we were just trying to give in a bit of space. Loads of snacks, take snacks everywhere, take drinks everywhere, because everyone gets hungry all the time. And just we built in probably more treats than we normally would, like stops for ice cream and things like that, just to keep everyone a bit sweeter and everyone a bit happier. We also, I think, now that we've done it, I did a blog post for my audience of families who might be travelling back to the UK for a trip, and I did a really big blog post where I listed everything that we planned in advance, everything we took in our hand luggage, everything we packed, and I've got that list now, so it will be 10 times easier next time I'm doing it, because I'll be able to go through my checklist and just tick things off as I'm organising it all.
Perfect. So we'll link to that in the show notes. So we'll put a link to Karen's blog post. So if you're planning to travel to the UK with your family, there you go. That'll be really handy. So I just want to say a big thanks to Karen for coming on to the podcast this week and sharing all about her trip and all the tips and how it went. It sounded like you had a really brilliant time. I did miss you when you were away. I was so pleased when you came back. But so thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been really good fun. And we had such a good time, and your resources are so useful when it comes to planning it all, because 8 years is a long time to have not been back, and so much has changed. Even though it felt like I was just going back home again, there was so much that I needed to learn about the trip. So that's been really useful. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Karen. Again, just want to say a huge thanks to Karen for joining me for this episode. It was great to catch up with her and chat about her trip around the UK. You can find everything we talked about in this episode, including links to the various places that Karen talked about, in the show notes for this episode, which you can find at uktravelplanning.com/episode 37. That just leaves me to say, until next week, happy UK travel planning.